The world falls silent for a moment, just long enough for you to hear it. The heartbeat of the wild. It's faint, ancient, and alive beneath every breath of wind. Out there, in the vast silence of forests and mountains, life is fighting, not for glory, not for recognition, but simply to exist. And sometimes, when fate decides to test the limits of love, the wild calls upon us, not to rule, but to remember. They say humans were made to protect nature, but maybe we were meant to learn from it instead. Because in the eyes of a grieving mother bear, in the trembling breath of a wolf protecting her young, there lies a truth that humbles even the proudest heart. These aren't just animal hero moments, they're fragments of the divine written in fur, feather, and silence. They remind us that love doesn't always speak. Sometimes it just endures. Every animal rescue story carries a pulse that echoes through the soul. It's not only about survival, it's about connection. When we watch a creature cling to life, we don't just see nature struggling, we see ourselves reflected back. The courage, the pain, the fragile hope, it's all there unfiltered. And maybe that's why these stories touch something sacred in us. But here's the paradox. The wild doesn't ask for our pity, it asks for our respect. True wildlife rescue isn't about becoming the savior. It's about restoring harmony to something much greater than ourselves. To help without understanding is to interfere. To observe with love is to protect. The forest doesn't need heroes. It needs humans who remember they are part of it. So before this story begins, take a breath. Feel the air, the weight of life around you. Let your heart soften, your senses open. Because what you're about to witness is more than a story of rescue. It's a revelation of the bond that unites all living things. A bond that whispers through every heartbeat, reminding us to save another life is to rediscover our own. The forest was silent, too silent. Then, through the mist, she appeared. A massive mother bear, trembling, her breath visible in the icy air. In her jaws, a tiny cub hung motionless, its fur matted with snow. Every step she took seemed heavier than the last. You could almost feel her pain in the air itself, thick, unspoken, real. This wasn't just another animal rescue story. This was a cry for help from the wild itself. What drives a creature like her to walk toward humans instead of away from them? Instinct should scream run, yet her heart whispers hope. That single act, choosing to trust what she doesn't understand, holds more bravery than most people will show in a lifetime. These are the animal hero moments that remind us love isn't a human invention. It's nature's oldest language. She doesn't have words. She has devotion. The kind that fights through cold, hunger, and fear because something inside her refuses to give up. Some call it instinct. But if you've ever watched a mother refuse to abandon her dying young, you know, it feels like love. A raw, selfless love that defies science and explanation. And for those who witness it, something changes. You realize that behind those amber eyes is not a beast, but a soul caught in a battle between nature's cruelty and a mother's mercy. You start to ask yourself, what would I do if I stood in front of her right now? Would I stay still or step forward? Step. Because sometimes life places us face to face with moments that rewrite what we believe about compassion. And just when we think we've understood the boundaries between us and the wild, we're about to discover what happens when humans decide to intervene. His heartbeat pounded louder than the wind. The forest around him felt alive, watching, waiting. Then he saw her, a mother bear, massive yet trembling, her fur glistening with frost and grief. She lowered her dying cub at his feet, eyes locked on his, as if begging for something beyond language. For a moment, everything else vanished, the cold, the fear, even logic itself. It was just one man, one mother, and the unbearable weight of choice. This was no ordinary animal rescue story. This was the raw intersection of love, instinct, and destiny. That's the thing about compassion. It doesn't ask permission. It floods you, consumes you, demands action. Every nerve screams, "Do something." But the wild has its own rules, and kindness, when misplaced, can turn lethal. A wildlife rescue done wrong can cost not one, but two lives. The hardest truth to accept: sometimes the right thing to do is nothing at all. Experts call it the silent law of nature. Help, but wisely. A true rescuer doesn't act out of impulse, but out of balance. He knows that every touch, every move carries consequences that ripple far beyond the moment. The animal hero moments that truly matter are not always dramatic. Sometimes they're quiet, the ones where a human steps back and nature takes a breath of relief. Still, that battle inside doesn't fade easily. How do you stand there, heartbreaking, and not reach out? How do you let pain unfold before your eyes? It's a test that strips you down to your core, forcing you to question what compassion really means. And somewhere in that fragile space, between love and restraint, something greater is revealed. Because the next time we meet a creature in need, we'll remember this moment, the moment when the heart wanted to rescue, but wisdom whispered, "Wait." And from that whisper, the next story rises, where emotion and perception collide in the way we see wildlife itself. A lens doesn't just capture what it sees, it reveals what we feel. In a single frame, a mother bear pressing her muzzle against her cub's fur becomes a symphony of emotion. The wind carries her grief, the snow reflects her silence, and the camera unknowingly turns nature into poetry. This is where an animal rescue story becomes more than a scene. It becomes a mirror, showing us not the bear's heart, but our own yearning to believe that love exists in every corner of creation. We humans have a tender weakness. We crave meaning in everything that breathes. When a bear looks back before disappearing into the woods, we see gratitude. When a rescuer kneels beside her, we see destiny. But perhaps what we call love is simply instinct, raw, pure, unspoken. Still, isn't there beauty in that illusion? Isn't that what makes wildlife rescue stories touch millions? Our hope that the divide between us and the wild is smaller than we think? These stories move us because they whisper something ancient, that life, no matter its form, recognizes kindness. We feel tears form not just for the animal, but for the reflection of ourselves, our forgotten softness, our desire to protect what cannot speak. And in those animal hero moments, we rediscover something sacred we've lost in the noise of modern life: reverence. Yet emotion is a double-edged gift. The same empathy that awakens our compassion can also distort the truth. We see a bear's eyes and imagine sorrow. We see a trembling paw and call it prayer. But nature doesn't act for us. It simply is. Still, maybe that's why it humbles us. Because even when we misinterpret her, she teaches us to feel more deeply. Perhaps the stories we tell about animals aren't really about them. They're about us. Our capacity to care, to ache, to see the divine in the ordinary. But as emotion deepens, so must awareness. Because behind every moving image lies a living being, a heartbeat that feels the weight of our presence. And that's where the next truth emerges. What happens inside an animal's body when our compassion touches too close? Listen closely. The forest breathes. You can hear it in the rustle of leaves, in the trembling cry of a frightened cub. Its heartbeat races so fast it seems to echo through the ground itself. Muscles tense, pupils widen, air burns in the lungs. This is fear in its purest form, not anger, not aggression, but survival screaming for space. And within every animal rescue story, this invisible struggle unfolds, unseen by most, yet felt by every creature ever touched by human hands. To us, reaching out feels like kindness. To them, it feels like chaos. The warmth of our palms may translate as danger, the scent of our skin as uncertainty. Even when we mean well, our closeness can ignite alarms older than memory itself. A wildlife rescue done without understanding can send the body into a storm of cortisol and adrenaline, chemicals that weaken the will to fight. Sometimes, the very act of saving becomes a silent kind of harm. When fear lingers, it leaves scars you cannot see. Animals remember. Their bodies hold stories long after the wounds heal. A bear that's been handled too often may flinch at every sound. A cub raised by humans may lose its wildness forever. True love for the wild must include restraint, for even good intentions can steal freedom. Real heroes in the wild know this truth. They move softly, speak little, and understand that healing begins where intrusion ends. They observe without ownership, nurture without naming. The animal hero moments that matter most are often invisible, measured not in applause, but in the heartbeat of a creature that learns to trust the forest again. And maybe that's the ultimate act of mercy, to step back and let life find its rhythm once more. Because the wild doesn't exist to be tamed or thanked, it exists to remind us of humility. The next time we face a wounded soul beneath the trees, we must ask, will our presence bring peace or panic? The answer, as always, lies not in our hands, but in our awareness. The forest doesn't belong to us. It welcomes us only as quiet guests. Every tree holds a memory. Every trail remembers footsteps long gone. When we enter that world, we carry both danger and hope in our hands. That's why every wildlife rescue begins not with courage, but with humility. The truest act of compassion is not to conquer the wild, but to honor its sacred order, observing, learning, waiting for the right moment to move. There is power in stillness. To kneel, to listen, to let the forest speak before you do. Every rustle, every glance, every heartbeat is part of a rhythm older than words. In every animal rescue story, patience becomes the highest form of strength, because helping without understanding is not mercy, it's noise. The wisest rescuers know that silence is not the absence of action, it's the language of respect. So call upon those who walk between two worlds, the experts, the caretakers, the quiet healers. They move without glory, guided not by pride, but by purpose. They know that a true animal hero moment doesn't seek attention. It seeks balance. The cub that finds its mother again, the bird that disappears into the sunrise, the wolf that returns to the snow without fear. These are the unseen miracles of a love that expects nothing in return. When the rescue is done, leave no trace but gratitude. Let the forest close behind you as if you were never there. Whisper a prayer, not for yourself, but for the life that continues beyond your reach. Because compassion, when pure, doesn't demand to be remembered. It simply becomes part of the earth's quiet healing. And in that silence, something eternal awakens. You begin to feel that every creature, every breath of wind, every flicker of life is connected to something divine. To protect them is to protect that sacred thread that binds all existence. And as the light fades through the trees, you understand. The wild was never something to be saved. It was always something to be respected, cherished, and remembered. Maybe the wild has been trying to tell us something all along, that love isn't measured by how much we hold on, but by how gently we let go. Every animal rescue story, every wildlife rescue, every silent act of compassion we witness is more than a moment. It's a reminder that life doesn't need to be controlled to be beautiful. It only needs to be respected. When you think about that mother bear, her eyes full of trust and pain, ask yourself, what would I have done? Would I have stepped forward? Or stayed still and let nature decide? There's no easy answer, and maybe that's the point. The wild doesn't need our perfection. It needs our presence, our willingness to care, to learn, to walk softly. If this story touched you, don't let it fade when the screen goes dark. Carry it, speak about it, Let it change how you see every tree, every bird, every quiet gaze that crosses your path. Because these animal hero moments are not just theirs. They belong to all of us. They remind us that even the smallest act of awareness can echo across generations. And now, before you go, take a breath. Feel the air in your lungs, the same air shared by every living thing. Somewhere far beyond the noise of cities and screens, the forest still breathes. The rivers still sing. The animals still wait for us to remember. So if your heart was moved tonight, let it stay open. Subscribe, turn on the notifications, and return when you need to feel connected again. Because this isn't just a channel, it's a sanctuary, a place where every story, every heartbeat, every whisper of the wild reminds us that we were never separate from nature. We were always part of it.